I'm taking half your millions, including your dead mother's estate. The words sliced through the Memphis courtroom like a blade, my husband Tyler's voice dripping with smugness as he sat across from me, already counting money that would never be his. His $3,000 suit, one I'd foolishly paid for, was pressed to perfection, his blonde hair slicked back in that nauseating way that once made my heart flutter but now made my stomach churn. If you're ready to witness the most brutal courtroom revenge you've ever seen, smash that like button, subscribe to Formidable Revenge channel, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, because this story will leave you speechless. My name is Rachel Martinez, I'm 43 years old, and I never imagined I'd be sitting in a Tennessee divorce court watching the man I'd trusted with everything attempt to steal my mother's life savings. Tyler lounged in his chair like he'd already won the lottery, his attorney's briefcase bulging with documents outlining exactly how they planned to walk away with my family's legacy. The courtroom buzzed with spectators who'd caught wind of what promised to be a multi-million-dollar bloodbath. Local reporters scribbled notes, their cameras ready to capture what they assumed would be Tyler's victory lap. Judge Patricia Blackwood, a silver-haired woman with 25 years of experience, reviewed the initial paperwork with practiced neutrality. Tyler turned slightly, flashing me what he probably considered a triumphant smile. The sheer audacity sent rage coursing through my veins. This was the same man who'd whispered sweet promises in my ear, who'd claimed to love my ambitious spirit, not my bank account. 5 years of marriage, and every single moment had been a calculated lie. The mahogany-paneled courtroom felt suffocating, its weight pressing down as my life was dissected before strangers. Outside, I could hear Memphis traffic humming, normal people living normal lives while mine was being shredded by the man who'd vowed to protect it. I clutched my leather purse tighter, feeling the manila envelope inside that would change everything. Tyler had no idea what was coming. Mrs. Martinez, Judge Blackwood's voice cut through my thoughts. Do you have any response to these claims? I rose slowly, my pulse hammering but my resolve unshakable. This was the moment Tyler's greed would finally destroy him. Your Honor, I believe there's something the court needs to see. Looking back, I should have recognized Tyler's true nature from our first meeting at that Atlanta business conference 2 years ago. I was running Martinez Analytics, helping small companies streamline their operations, when this charming pharmaceutical sales rep swept me off my feet during the most vulnerable period of my life. My mother had been gone for 3 years, and I was still drowning in grief when Tyler appeared like some kind of savior. He was attentive, supportive, and seemed genuinely fascinated by my work analyzing financial data. You're incredible, he'd say, watching me review client reports. I've never met anyone who understands business the way you do. I thought he was impressed by my intelligence. Now I realized he was calculating my net worth. Our whirlwind romance was a masterclass in manipulation. Expensive dinners at Nashville's finest restaurants, weekend getaways to Gatlinburg, romantic gestures that should have raised red flags. Tyler claimed his pharmaceutical job paid well, but he was spending money like a man with unlimited resources. I believe in investing in the people I care about, he'd say when I questioned his lavish spending. I was too flattered to see the truth. He was already planning his long-term investment strategy. When Tyler proposed after 8 months, my attorney, Sandra Morrison, insisted on a prenuptial agreement. Any successful businesswoman needs protection, she'd explained. It's not romantic, but it's necessary. I'd felt awkward bringing it up, worried Tyler would think I didn't trust him. But his reaction was perfect, too perfect. He laughed and waved it off like it was meaningless. Of course, sweetheart. Whatever makes you comfortable. I'm not marrying you for your money. I'm marrying you for you. He signed those papers without reading a single word, joking that love doesn't need fine print. His casual attitude convinced me that my suspicions were unfounded. It's just romantic paperwork, he'd said, scrawling his signature with theatrical flair. Like promising to love and honor, but with more legal jargon. Sandra had been thorough, protecting not just my existing assets, but any future inheritance or business growth. Your mother's estate will eventually come to you, she'd reminded me. This ensures it stays in your family where it belongs. I thought she was being overly cautious. Now I realized she'd been absolutely prophetic. The real revelation came 18 months into our marriage when the call came about my mother's estate. She'd left me everything: her house, her investment portfolio, her collection of first edition books, and $3.2 million in carefully managed funds. It was far more than I'd expected, transforming my financial situation overnight. Tyler's reaction should have terrified me. His eyes literally glowed when I shared the news. $3.2 million, he repeated, like he couldn't believe his luck. Rachel, we're rich. The way he said "we" should have been my first warning. From that moment, Tyler transformed into someone I didn't recognize. He quit his pharmaceutical job within 6 months, claiming he wanted to explore new opportunities and support my success. What he actually did was treat my mother's money like his personal playground. He bought a BMW supposedly for networking purposes. He invested $40,000 in his friend's barbecue restaurant without consulting me, money that disappeared when the business failed within 8 months. He booked luxury vacations to Miami and Las Vegas, joined an exclusive golf club in Nashville, and started dressing like he'd been born into wealth. Every time I questioned a purchase, he'd remind me that we were partners and couples should trust each other with financial decisions. When I pointed out that he was spending money he hadn't earned, he'd get defensive and cruel. "You act like it's some big secret that I married up," he snapped during one particularly heated argument. "Everyone knows you needed someone like me to actually enjoy life. Before we met, you were just a lonely workaholic with no social life." His words cut deep because they contained a grain of truth. I had been lonely, and Tyler had brought excitement into my life. But I realized he'd been playing a long game, positioning himself as my savior while systematically planning to claim everything I'd inherited. The breaking point came 6 months ago when I discovered emails between Tyler and his attorney discussing divorce strategy. They'd been planning this for months, timing it to maximize his potential settlement. Tyler had researched Tennessee's community property laws, looking for ways to claim that his emotional support entitled him to half my assets. He'd even been telling people at the country club that the inheritance was family money belonging to both of us. He introduced himself as an investor and entrepreneur, conveniently forgetting that all his investments were made with my mother's carefully preserved wealth. When I confronted him about his lies and spending, Tyler became vicious. "You should be grateful," he snarled. "I turned you from a boring accountant into someone people actually want to be around. I deserve compensation for that transformation." The audacity was breathtaking. He genuinely believed he'd done me a favor by marrying me, and now expected to be paid handsomely for his services. The final straw came when I found documents outlining his complete strategy. He planned to argue that his emotional support during my grief, his career sacrifice, and his lifestyle contributions entitled him to half my inheritance. He'd even calculated potential alimony payments. That's when I contacted Sandra again and filed for divorce myself. If Tyler wanted a war over my mother's money, I'd give him one, but it wouldn't end the way he expected. Tyler's confidence in court was intoxicating to watch, knowing what was coming. His attorney, Richard Garrett, was a shark who'd clearly promised Tyler a massive payday. They'd done their homework on Tennessee divorce law, prepared arguments about emotional contributions and lifestyle adjustments. "Your Honor," Garrett continued his opening, "my client sacrificed his promising pharmaceutical career to support Mrs. Martinez during her period of grief. He provided emotional stability that allowed her to process her inheritance and grow her business. Tennessee law recognizes these contributions as marital assets." Tyler nodded along, occasionally glancing at me with that insufferable smirk. He thought he was untouchable, that his charm and legal maneuvering would secure him millions. Judge Blackwood listened impassively as Garrett outlined Tyler's claims. He painted a picture of a devoted husband who'd given up everything to support his wife's success, now being callously discarded once his usefulness had ended. Mrs. Martinez received $3.2 million during their marriage, Garrett announced. Under Tennessee law, this inheritance became marital property the moment it was deposited into accounts accessible to both parties. I had to admire his confidence, even as I knew he was building his case on quicksand. Tyler leaned forward, his eyes sparkling with anticipation. He was already mentally spending money that would never be his, probably planning which luxury car to buy first. The courtroom spectators were eating it up, clearly fascinated by what they assumed would be a massive financial settlement. Some were probably calculating the numbers themselves, wondering how much Tyler would walk away with. Judge Blackwood turned to me. "Mrs. Martinez, do you have any response to these claims?" This was it, the moment I'd been planning for months. I reached into my purse and withdrew the manila envelope Sandra had prepared, the nuclear weapon that would obliterate Tyler's carefully constructed fantasy. "Your Honor, I believe the court needs to review this document before proceeding with any asset division discussions." The change in atmosphere was immediate and electric. Tyler's confident expression faltered as he watched me approach the judge's bench. Even from across the room, I could see confusion creeping across his features. Judge Blackwood accepted the envelope. "What is the nature of this document, Mrs. Martinez?" "It's a prenuptial agreement, Your Honor. One that my husband signed before our marriage 5 years ago." The words hit the courtroom like a physical force. Garrett shot up from his chair, his face flushing red. "Your Honor, we were not made aware of any prenuptial agreement. This is highly irregular." "Sit down, Mr. Garrett," Judge Blackwood commanded, already breaking the seal. "I'll examine the documents and determine their validity." I returned to my seat, keeping my eyes locked on Tyler. His face was cycling through emotions, confusion, disbelief, and the first hints of panic. He was whispering frantically to Garrett, gesturing toward the judge's bench. This was better than I'd imagined. Tyler's world was about to collapse, and he didn't even realize it yet. Judge Blackwood was a meticulous reader, taking her time with each page of the agreement Sandra had crafted 5 years ago. The document was comprehensive, every potential loophole anticipated, every challenge addressed before Tyler even knew he wanted to make them. "This appears to be a properly executed prenuptial agreement," Judge Blackwood announced after several minutes. "It's dated 6 weeks before your marriage, witnessed by 2 notaries, and signed by both parties." Garrett looked like he wanted to crawl under his table. I realized he'd filed this case without conducting basic due diligence, assuming the marriage was a straightforward asset grab. Tyler had been so confident in his strategy that he'd never even mentioned the possibility of a prenup to his lawyer. "Your Honor," Tyler suddenly stood, his voice cracking. "I need to see that document. I don't remember signing anything like that." Judge Blackwood's eyebrows rose. "Mr. Martinez, please remain seated and allow your attorney to handle these proceedings." But Tyler was spiraling, his carefully constructed confidence crumbling. "Rachel, what is this? You never told me this was some kind of legal trap." "Mr. Martinez," Judge Blackwood's voice could have frozen mercury. "You will remain silent or I will hold you in contempt." Garrett approached the bench with obvious reluctance, examining the prenuptial agreement with growing horror. I watched his face grow paler with each page. He returned to whisper urgently with Tyler, who was shaking his head in disbelief. The courtroom spectators were fully engaged now, sensing drama unfolding. I could hear muffled conversations and the scratching of reporters' pens as they captured Tyler's public humiliation. "Your Honor," Garrett finally addressed the court, his earlier confidence completely evaporated. "My client would like to request a brief recess to review these documents more thoroughly." Judge Blackwood checked her watch. "Mr. Garrett, did you not conduct discovery regarding potential prenuptial agreements before filing your asset claims?" The attorney's silence was damning. Tyler had been so cocky about his plan that he'd led his own lawyer into a minefield. "I'll give you 10 minutes to review the document," Judge Blackwood declared. "But I should warn you that this appears to be a legally binding agreement that significantly impacts your client's claims." During the recess, I watched Tyler and Garrett huddle near the windows, their conversation growing more animated and desperate. Even from across the room, I could pinpoint the exact moment Tyler realized his scheme had backfired spectacularly. Sandra used the time to review her notes. "He's going to claim fraud or duress," she predicted quietly. "Men like Tyler always blame everyone else when their schemes collapse." She was absolutely right. When court resumed, Garrett immediately launched into a desperate argument that would have been laughable if it weren't so pathetic. "Your Honor, my client believes he was deceived about the nature of this document. Mrs. Martinez presented it as a romantic formality, not a comprehensive asset protection agreement." Judge Blackwood looked distinctly unimpressed. "Mr. Garrett, are you claiming your client signed a legal document without reading it?" "Your Honor, my client trusted his wife to be honest about the document's scope and implications." I had to bite my tongue to keep from laughing. Tyler, who'd always prided himself on being a shrewd businessman, was now claiming he was too trusting to understand a legal contract. "The document is clearly labeled as a prenuptial agreement," Judge Blackwood observed, flipping through the pages. "It includes standard warnings about seeking independent legal counsel. Did your client choose to waive that right?" Garrett shuffled through his papers nervously. "Yes, Your Honor." "And the document was notarized with your client present, confirming his identity?" "Yes, Your Honor." Judge Blackwood turned her laser focus directly on Tyler. "Mr. Martinez, when you signed this document, did anyone force you to do so? Were you under any kind of duress or coercion?" Tyler's face was crimson with embarrassment and rage. "No, Your Honor, but I thought it was just paperwork. Rachel made it sound like it didn't matter." "Did you read the document before signing it?" The question hung in the air like an executioner's axe. Tyler looked around the courtroom as if searching for an escape route. The silence stretched until it became unbearable for everyone present. "Mr. Martinez, I asked you a direct question." I skimmed it," Tyler finally admitted, his voice barely audible. "But Rachel said it was just a formality." Judge Blackwood's expression was pure judicial contempt. "Mr. Martinez, you signed a legal document without reading it, after waiving your right to legal counsel, and now you're asking this court to invalidate it because you didn't take it seriously?" The courtroom was completely silent. Even the reporters had stopped writing, mesmerized by Tyler's public destruction. Garrett made one final desperate attempt. "Your Honor, perhaps we could argue that the agreement is unconscionable given the disparity in—" "Mr. Garrett," Judge Blackwood interrupted. "Have you reviewed the financial disclosures included with this prenuptial agreement?" Garrett flipped through the document, clearly searching for something he'd missed. "There are extensive financial disclosures here, Your Honor." "Indeed there are." Mrs. Martinez provided complete documentation of her assets, income, and expected inheritance. "Your client signed acknowledgments confirming he reviewed and understood all financial information. This is one of the most thorough prenuptial agreements I've seen in my career." Tyler looked like he was about to vomit. The golden boy who'd charmed his way through life was finally facing consequences for his actions. Judge Blackwood cleared her throat and began reading directly from the prenuptial agreement, her voice carrying clearly through the silent courtroom. Section 4, Paragraph A. All assets owned by either party prior to marriage shall remain the separate property of that party. Section 4, Paragraph B. Any inheritance received by either party during the marriage shall be considered separate property and shall not be subject to division upon divorce. Tyler gripped the edge of his table so hard his knuckles went white. "That can't be legal," he muttered, loud enough for several people to hear. Section 6. Judge Blackwood continued, addresses spousal support. Quote, "Neither party shall be entitled to alimony or spousal support from the other, regardless of the length of the marriage or the disparity in income." This section was initialed by both parties and witnessed separately. Garrett was frantically scribbling notes, probably trying to find any possible loophole. But Sandra had been too thorough 5 years ago. Your Honor, I stood up. If I may address the court? Proceed, Mrs. Martinez. When I inherited my mother's estate 18 months ago, I consulted with my attorney about whether the inheritance was protected under the prenuptial agreement. We confirmed it was fully covered under Section 4, Paragraph B. The inheritance has been kept in separate accounts and has never been commingled with marital assets. This was the final nail in Tyler's coffin. Not only was the prenup ironclad, but I'd been scrupulously careful about keeping the inheritance separate. Judge Blackwood nodded approvingly. Mrs. Martinez, did you use any portion of your inheritance for marital expenses or joint purchases? No, Your Honor. I maintained my regular business income for household expenses. The inheritance has remained completely separate. Tyler exploded. That's not true. She bought things for us. She paid for vacations. Mr. Martinez, Judge Blackwood's voice was arctic. You are out of order. Sit down immediately. But Tyler was beyond reason now, his mask completely shattered. This is insane. I've been with her for 5 years. I supported her emotionally. I gave up my career. You quit your job to spend my money, I said quietly, unable to help myself. Mrs. Martinez, Judge Blackwood warned, but her tone was almost amused. Garrett was desperately tugging on Tyler's jacket, trying to get him to sit down, but Tyler was in full meltdown mode. She trapped me. Tyler shouted. She made me think we were partners. She let me believe that money was ours. Mr. Martinez, if you cannot control yourself, I will have the bailiff remove you from my courtroom. The threat finally penetrated Tyler's rage. He collapsed into his chair, chest heaving, but the damage was done. Everyone had seen his true nature, the greedy, entitled man who'd married me for my money and then had the audacity to play victim when his plan failed. Judge Blackwood reviewed the final pages of the prenuptial agreement with deliberate precision. The tension in the room was suffocating as everyone waited for her ruling. Based on my review of this prenuptial agreement, Judge Blackwood announced, I am ready to render my decision on asset division. She removed her reading glasses and looked directly at Tyler with an expression that could have melted steel. Mr. Martinez, this prenuptial agreement is valid, comprehensive, and legally binding. You are entitled to exactly nothing from your wife's premarital assets, inheritance, or business holdings. The words hit Tyler like physical blows. His mouth fell open, and he stared at the judge in complete shock. Nothing, he whispered. Nothing, Judge Blackwood confirmed. Furthermore, according to Section 7 of this agreement, all debts incurred individually by either party remain the responsibility of that party. Mrs. Martinez, do you have documentation of debts incurred solely by your husband? Sandra handed me a thick folder, which I passed to the bailiff. Yes, Your Honor. Credit card debts, the BMW loan, the failed restaurant investment, and country club fees totaling approximately $95,000. Garrett looked like he wanted to disappear entirely. The case he'd thought would net him a substantial fee had turned into a complete disaster. Mr. Martinez, Judge Blackwood continued, not only will you receive no assets from this marriage, but you remain personally responsible for $95,000 in debt that you accumulated during the marriage. The courtroom erupted in murmurs and whispers. I could hear someone behind me trying not to laugh. Tyler had gone from expecting millions to facing bankruptcy in 30 minutes. Your Honor, Tyler's voice was barely audible. This can't be right. 5 years of marriage has to count for something. Judge Blackwood's smile was razor-sharp. It does count for something, Mr. Martinez. It counts as an expensive lesson in reading legal documents before signing them. The gavel came down with finality that echoed through the courtroom like thunder. The court grants the divorce petition filed by Mrs. Martinez. No assets shall be transferred to Mr. Martinez. All individual debts remain with the party who incurred them. This court is adjourned. Tyler sat in stunned silence as reality crashed over him. 5 years of careful planning, destroyed by his own arrogance and greed. As people filed out, I remained seated, watching Tyler's world collapse. Garrett was already packing his briefcase, eager to escape this professional embarrassment. "Rachel," Tyler called out as I finally stood to leave. "We need to talk about this. This isn't over." I turned to face him one last time. "Tyler, it was over the moment you decided to marry me for my money instead of loving me for who I am. The prenuptial agreement didn't ruin your plan, your greed did." His face crumpled as the full weight of his situation hit him. No inheritance, no assets, and crushing debt that would follow him for years. As I walked toward the courtroom doors with Sandra beside me, I felt lighter than I had in months. Justice had been served with brutal efficiency. Tyler's life unraveled completely in the months following our divorce. The $95,000 debt forced him into bankruptcy within 6 months, destroying his credit and eliminating any hope of maintaining his lifestyle. Word spread quickly through Memphis business circles about the man who tried to steal his wife's inheritance, making him a cautionary tale about prenuptial agreements and the dangers of marrying for money. The country club revoked his membership when he couldn't pay his dues. The BMW was repossessed, leaving him dependent on public transportation. His dating life became non-existent as women in our social circles learned about his gold-digging scheme, warning each other about the charming man who viewed marriage as a business transaction. He was forced to move in with his elderly parents in a Memphis suburb and take an entry-level sales position, his dreams of living off my mother's money replaced by the harsh reality of starting over at 48 with nothing but debt and a shattered reputation. Meanwhile, I used a portion of my protected inheritance to establish the Martinez Foundation, providing legal assistance to women seeking prenuptial agreements and divorce representation. My goal was ensuring other women wouldn't fall victim to financial predators like Tyler. 6 months after the divorce, I ran into Tyler at a Memphis grocery store. He was wearing discount clothes and looked like he'd aged 5 years. When he saw me, his face flushed with embarrassment and lingering anger. "Rachel," he said quietly, "I hope you're happy." I looked at him, really looked, and felt nothing but pity for the broken man before me. "Tyler, I'm not happy about what happened. I'm sad that you wasted 5 years of both our lives chasing money instead of building something real." He started to respond, then seemed to think better of it. As I walked away, I realized the revenge I'd sought wasn't the sweetest part of this story. The real victory was discovering my own strength and protecting other women from making the same mistakes I'd almost made. Tyler had tried to steal my fortune and ended up losing everything. But more importantly, he tried to steal my dignity and self-worth, and that was the one theft that had backfired most spectacularly of all. Sometimes justice isn't just about punishment. Sometimes it's about protecting the people who come after us, ensuring the predators of the world learn that some victories come at too high a price to ever be worth claiming. If this story of brutal courtroom justice left you satisfied, hit that like button, subscribe to Formidable Revenge channel for more stories of karma in action, and tell us in the comments, what would you have done in Rachel's situation?